Nobody noticed her. She sat in the back corner of the church every day, hunched over, dressed in clothes that had seen better years, smelling faintly of the streets she called home. Most people avoided that pew. Some held their breath when they walked past. Others pretended not to see her at all. But one person saw her. A 15-year-old boy who would kneel beside her, talk to her like she mattered, and discover a secret that would change his understanding of holiness forever. What Carlo Acutis learned from that forgotten old woman in those final months before his death has never been fully told. The encounter was witnessed by only a handful of people, and what she revealed to him about suffering, about prayer, about the hidden saints who hold the world together, shook Carlo so deeply that he told his mother, "I finally understand what real holiness looks like, and it's not what I thought." 3 weeks after their last conversation, Carlo died. 2 weeks after Carlo's death, the old woman disappeared. Nobody knew her real name. Nobody knew where she came from or where she went. But the lessons she taught a teenage saint, the truths she revealed about the spiritual life, and the mystery of who she actually was have profound implications for every person watching this video right now. Because what if the people you're ignoring, the people you're avoiding, the people you think have nothing to offer you are actually the ones God sent to teach you the most important lessons of your life? What if holiness doesn't look like what you think it looks like? And what if everything you've been taught about recognizing saints needs to be turned completely upside down? This story will challenge you. It will make you uncomfortable. It will force you to question who you pay attention to and who you dismiss. But if you're brave enough to hear it all the way through, it might change how you see every person you encounter for the rest of your life. Hit that like button right now if you're ready for a story that will shake everything you thought you knew about holiness, and subscribe immediately because what you're about to discover has been hidden for too long. Turn on those notifications because this message needs to reach everyone who thinks they know what a saint looks like. The encounter began in September of 2006, about a month before Carlo died. He had been diagnosed with leukemia, and though he was undergoing treatment, he insisted on attending daily mass whenever he was physically able. His mother, Antonia, would drive him to their parish church in Milan, and Carlo would spend time in prayer before and after mass. That's when he first noticed her, an elderly woman, probably in her 80s, who sat in the back left corner of the church. She was there every single morning when Carlo arrived. She would be kneeling, sometimes sitting when her knees gave out, but always in that same spot. Her clothes were worn. Her hands were rough and marked by decades of hard work. She carried a small bag that contained everything she owned. Most people assumed she was homeless. Some thought she might be mentally unstable because they'd see her lips moving constantly, talking to someone invisible. The church staff tolerated her presence but didn't engage with her. She was part of the background, a fixture people stepped around on their way to more important things. But Carlo noticed her, and more than noticing, he was drawn to her in a way he couldn't explain. One morning after Mass, instead of leaving with his mother, Carlo walked to the back corner and knelt in the pew beside the old woman. Antonia watched from a distance, curious but not wanting to interrupt. She saw Carlo speak to the woman. She saw the old woman turn and look at her son with eyes that Antonia later described as surprisingly clear and penetrating for someone who looked so worn down by life. They talked for nearly 20 minutes. When Carlo finally rejoined his mother, she asked what he had discussed with the homeless woman. Carlo's answer was cryptic. "She's not what everyone thinks she is, Mom. She's teaching me things about prayer that I never learned anywhere else." Drop a comment if you've ever dismissed someone who turned out to be far more than they appeared. Your story might help others recognize who they're overlooking. Over the next few weeks, Carlo made it his practice to spend time with the old woman after every Mass he attended. Sometimes they would talk. Sometimes they would pray together in silence. Antonia noticed that her son, who was facing his own mortality at just 15 years old, seemed to find peace in these encounters that he found nowhere else. Other people in the church began to notice too. Some were uncomfortable seeing a well-dressed teenager from a good family spending time with what they perceived as a derelict. One woman even pulled Antonia aside and suggested, as delicately as possible, that Carlo shouldn't be associating with that type of person. It wasn't appropriate. It didn't look right. Antonia asked Carlo about it that evening. Was he trying to help the old woman? Was this some kind of charity project? Carlo's response stunned his mother. "I'm not helping her, Mom. She's helping me. She understands suffering in a way I'm just beginning to learn. She knows Jesus in a way that most educated people never will. She's teaching me what I need to know." "What is she teaching you?" Antonia asked. Carlo thought for a moment before answering. "She's teaching me that the people the world throws away are often the ones God treasures most. That real prayer isn't about feeling good or getting what you want. That holiness isn't about being noticed or celebrated. She's teaching me to see differently." But there was something else. Something Carlo hesitated to tell his mother at first because it sounded too strange, too impossible. The old woman knew things she shouldn't know. She knew details about Carlo's life, about his struggles, about his fears regarding his illness. Not because he told her, but because, as she explained, she had been praying for him for years before they ever met. "How is that possible?" Carlo asked her during one of their conversations. "You didn't know me before last month." The old woman smiled, revealing missing teeth but also a joy that seemed to come from somewhere beyond her circumstances. "I didn't know your name," she said, "but I knew you. God shows me people to pray for. Years ago, He showed me a boy who would love the Eucharist and die young but leave a great legacy. I've been praying for that boy ever since. When you walked into this church, I recognized you immediately." Share this video right now if this story is giving you chills. Someone in your network needs to hear this before we reveal what happened next. Carlo was simultaneously unsettled and fascinated by this revelation. He began asking the old woman about her life, about how she ended up living on the streets, about what her prayer life looked like. Her story emerged in fragments over multiple conversations. She had been married once decades ago. Her husband died young. They had no children. She had worked various jobs but never earned much. When she became too old to work, she had no one to care for her and no savings to support herself. She ended up on the streets, relying on the kindness of strangers and the grace of God. But instead of becoming bitter, instead of abandoning faith in a God who seemed to have abandoned her, she had gone deeper into prayer. She would spend hours each day in churches, not because they were warm or safe, but because she wanted to be near the Eucharist. She had developed a prayer life of such intensity and intimacy with God that suffering had become, in her words, the gift that taught me how to love. "Most people pray to escape suffering," she told Carlo, "but real holiness comes from learning to suffer with Christ, not suffering that makes you bitter, suffering that makes you more loving. That's the secret nobody wants to hear." Carlo, who was facing his own suffering through leukemia, understood what she meant in a way few teenagers could. He asked her how she maintained such peace, such joy, when her life circumstances were so difficult. Her answer would become one of the most important lessons Carlo ever received. "I learned to see Jesus in everything. In the cold nights, in the hunger, in the people who walk past me like I'm invisible. Every suffering became a chance to unite myself to His cross. Every humiliation became a chance to practice humility. Every moment of being forgotten by people became a reminder that I'm never forgotten by God." She paused, then added something that struck Carlo deeply. "The world will forget me completely. No one will remember my name or write my story. But that's what real holiness looks like. Not being celebrated, not being remembered. Just loving God and accepting whatever He allows, whether it's consolation or desolation, whether anyone notices or not." Carlo was quiet for a long time after hearing this. Finally, he said, "The church should know about you. You should be recognized for your holiness." The old woman laughed, a sound that seemed too joyful for someone in her circumstances. "That's exactly the opposite of what holiness is about. The moment I want recognition, I've lost what matters. The saints the church canonizes are important, but the greatest saints are the ones only God knows about. I'm content to be one of those. Comment below if this perspective on holiness is challenging how you think about recognition and success. Your reflection might help others wrestling with the same questions. As Carlo's health declined in October 2006, his conversations with the old woman took on new urgency. He knew he was dying. The leukemia was progressing rapidly. He had weeks, maybe days, and he found himself coming back to the church not just for Mass, but specifically to talk with this woman who seemed to understand death in a way that brought life. During one of their final conversations, Carlo asked her directly, "Are you afraid of death?" "No," she answered simply. "I've been dying slowly for years. Every night on the streets that I survived was a gift. Every morning I woke up was a resurrection. Death will just be the final step of a journey I've been walking for a long time, and Jesus will be there like he's been here through all of it." She looked at Carlo with those penetrating eyes and said something that his mother later reported gave him great peace in his final days. "You're going to die soon, you know that, but your death won't be the end of your work. It will be the beginning. Everything you've done so far, all the love you've put into the Eucharist, all the websites you've built, all the people you've brought closer to Jesus, all of that was preparation. Your real work begins after you die." "How do you know that?" Carlo asked. "Because God told me. That's why I've been praying for you all these years. I've been preparing the way through prayer for what you're going to accomplish. My prayers won't be visible. They won't be recognized, but they're part of your mission. The hidden saints always work behind the visible ones." Carlo Acutis died on October 12, 2006. His last communion was received with the same devotion he had shown for 8 years. His mother was with him. He died peacefully, trusting that death was not an end but a beginning. The day after Carlo's funeral, Antonia went to the church to pray. She specifically went to the back corner where the old woman always sat, wanting to tell her that Carlo had passed away. But the old woman wasn't there. Antonia waited. She came back the next day, and the next. The old woman never appeared again. Antonia asked the church staff if they knew anything about her. No one did. She asked other regular Mass attendees if they had seen the homeless woman. Most barely remembered her. One person thought she might have gone to a shelter. Another assumed she had died. Antonia never saw her again. Despite searching, despite asking, the old woman had disappeared as mysteriously as she had appeared in Carlo's life. If you're still watching, subscribe to this channel immediately. We uncover stories and truths that transform how you understand faith and holiness. Don't miss what's coming next. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. The years passed. Carlo's cause for beatification moved forward. Miracles were documented through his intercession. His body was found incorrupt. In 2020, he was beatified. The boy who had spent his final weeks talking with a homeless woman nobody else paid attention to was now blessed Carlo Acutis on the path to sainthood. But Antonia never forgot the old woman. She would tell people close to her about those conversations, about the mysterious knowledge the woman had, about her sudden disappearance. Some suggested the woman might have been an angel. Others thought she was simply a holy soul whom God used to prepare Carlo for death. A few believed she might still be alive somewhere, continuing her hidden life of prayer that holds the world together in ways no one sees. What we know for certain is this: Carlo Acutis, who could have spent his final weeks only with family and friends, who could have occupied himself only with his own suffering, chose instead to sit with a forgotten old woman who had nothing to offer him except wisdom about suffering and prayer. And that choice revealed something essential about who Carlo was and what he valued. He saw what others didn't see. He valued what others dismissed. He learned from someone others avoided. And in doing so, he demonstrated a truth that the church has taught for centuries, but that modern culture constantly forgets. The greatest holiness is often found in the most unexpected places. In the people society overlooks, in the forgotten corners where no one thinks to look. The untold story of Carlo and the old woman teaches us several lessons that we desperately need to hear. First, it teaches us that we should never assume we know who is holy and who isn't based on external circumstances. The old woman had nothing. She lived on the streets. She smelled bad. She looked like she had nothing to offer, but she possessed spiritual wisdom that a brilliant teenager recognized as authentic and valuable. How many holy people are you walking past because they don't fit your image of what holiness looks like? How many opportunities to learn are you missing because you've decided in advance that certain people have nothing to teach you? Second, this story teaches that the hidden saints, the ones nobody knows about, might be more important in God's economy than the celebrated ones. The old woman was praying for Carlo years before he knew she existed. Her invisible prayers were preparing the way for his visible mission. We celebrate Carlo now, and rightly so. But what about all the hidden intercessors whose prayers made his work possible? Third, this story reveals that suffering accepted with love transforms both the sufferer and those around them. The old woman's poverty and hardship could have made her bitter. Instead, they made her holy. And that holiness, born from accepted suffering, became a gift she could give to a dying teenager who needed to learn those same lessons. Like this video right now and share it with everyone who needs to hear this story. The message about hidden holiness, about seeing people differently, about recognizing that saints don't always look like we expect them to. This message could change how someone treats the next person they encounter. Most importantly, let this story change how you see the people around you. That person you're avoiding because they make you uncomfortable might be the saint God sent to teach you something crucial. That individual you've dismissed because they have nothing you want might possess exactly what you need. That soul you've overlooked because they don't fit your categories might be one of the hidden ones who hold the world together through prayer you'll never see. In the comments section, commit to seeing people differently because of this story. Write something like, "I will pay attention to those I usually overlook," or "I will stop judging people by appearances," or "I will look for hidden holiness." Your commitment creates accountability and might inspire others to do the same. The mystery of the old woman's identity remains. Was she an angel sent to prepare Carlo for death? Was she a holy soul whom God used to teach his young saint essential truths? Is she still alive somewhere, continuing her hidden life of prayer and suffering? We may never know in this life. But perhaps that's exactly the point. Perhaps the fact that we don't know her name, that we can't celebrate her or canonize her or build a following around her, is precisely what makes her story so important. She represents all the hidden saints, all the forgotten holy ones, all the souls who love God intensely but receive no earthly recognition for it. And if Carlo Acutis, who is now blessed and on the path to sainthood, saw fit to spend his final weeks learning from such a person, what does that tell us about where we should be looking for wisdom? What does that reveal about who we should be paying attention to? May you have the eyes to see what Carlo saw. May you have the humility to learn from those the world dismisses. May you recognize that holiness comes in forms you don't expect, and that the greatest saints might be the ones whose names you never know. The old woman taught Carlo to see Jesus in everything, especially in suffering and obscurity. Carlo took that lesson to heart in his final days, and now, years after both of them have left this visible world, that lesson comes to us through their story. Don't waste it. Don't let this be just another inspiring tale you hear and forget. Let it change how you see people. Let it transform who you pay attention to. Let it open your eyes to the hidden holiness all around you that you've been trained to overlook. Because somewhere right now, in a back corner of a church, or on a street you walk past every day, or in a place you've learned not to look, there might be a saint. Hidden, forgotten, unknown to everyone except God. And whether you see them, whether you honor them, whether you learn from them, could determine whether you yourself ever become the saint God is calling you to be. The untold story of St. Carlo Acutis and the old woman ends without answers to all our questions. But it leaves us with a challenge that will echo for as long as we live. Will you see what Carlo saw? Will you value what the world dismisses? Will you learn from those who have nothing to offer except the wisdom that comes from loving God in complete obscurity? Your answer to that question matters more than you know, not just for your sake, but for the sake of all the hidden saints waiting for someone, anyone, to finally see them.